This is a Film Stories original podcast.
Welcome to the James Bond Book Club. Hosted by me, John Bleasdale. And welcome to the James Bond Book Club. My name is John Bleasdale. I am a James Bond fan and a writer, and I'm being joined by Alistair Satchell, who is a fan of all things 007 as well, and is also a podcaster whose podcast, What We Do in the Winter, is well worth a listen. I'll put a link in the show notes. Hi, Alistair.
Hello.
So all of the Ian Fleming James Bond books, including the posthumous Octopussy, we have covered. Wow, that's a little bit of a Yoda bit of syntax for you. All of this we have done previously, and this is the first episode of kind of a new season in which we'll be looking at the continuation novels. There are many continuation novels, and so what I'll be doing is picking one from each author as we go, and moving in that direction rather than going through. I think, John Gardner did a bunch, and Raymond Benson did a bunch, and Charlie Higson has obviously done a few of the young Bonds, and so I'm going to put these out as and when I have the opportunity and the guests, so it won't necessarily be every week, but I'll just, and if anybody has any suggestions, please email me and get in touch, and I will do my best to satisfy your every wish, listener. But Alistair, first of all, we're starting with Colonel's Son, the first of the James Bond continuation novels, originally published under the name Richard Markham. Is it Richard Markham?
Robert Markham.
Robert Markham. Sorry, I knew it was an R name. And and this is by Kingsley Amis, who was a sort of stalwart. Maybe you can correct me on this, but I had the feeling that he'd also had a read of The Man with the Golden Gun when that was published.
That's right, yeah. I think he was he had a sort of pass at towards the end of Fleming's life, or just after, just to kind of see what could be done. And if I remember rightly from the Fleming biography, he said, no, just leave it as it is. He did tidy it up a little bit, but not too much. I don't think he put anything of his own in it at all, if I remember rightly. So he was very much a fan of James Bond, and particularly Fleming's writing. He was the author of the James Bond dossier, which was the first kind of critical study of James Bond. So in many ways, he was the perfect person to take over the Bond mantle, although he was actually the second author to be offered the role. I didn't realise this until I was doing a wee bit more research there. And apparently there was someone beforehand who went, no, I don't want to do that. But to my mind, I think he's got the style down by pat. There's apart from the description of some pubic hair, which apparently was quite controversial at the time, it's very, very much a loving tribute to Fleming. I think there's a lot going on in it. It has to set up its stall quite quickly to say, I'm not Fleming, but I am Fleming, come with me. And then once it's got past that kind of first chapter or two kind of chunk of, okay, you're reading someone else writing this, you know this, I know this, it then gets into quite a story that rattles along a good leg, has a dip, comes back again. It's a fascinating, a really, really fascinating book. And actually, to my taste, better than Man with the Golden Gun.
Oh! Shots fired from a silenced pistol straight away. That's interesting. I like The Man with the Golden Gun much more than I think many people do. I find there is something of the sunset to it, and I even like the film, despite the sort of silly sort of penny whistle car stunt. Sorry.
Careful not to spinnerise that one.
Yeah. Exactly. I was there. I was there. Do you know what Werner Herzog's new film is called?
Is it Cunning Stunts?
No, it's Bucking Fastard.
Oh, I love it.
And I'm not joking. I'm not joking. I recently got an email to that effect.
Yeah.
So yes, Colonel Sun has this. First of all, I think it seems to engage also with the films in a way that that we have to sort of take into account that now he's writing for an audience of readers who are also an audience of moviegoers. So there's there's an element that I think Kingsley's got one eye on the film rights, perhaps.
Mm-hmm. That you can see that the action sequences are very, very. They're almost like storyboards. You can really like the Parthenon bits as well. That's really nicely staged, and yeah, it's well staged writing, and he sets up this stall of where they are. Sorry, I've said that twice, but then it sets up the kind of location of where they are really nicely. There's a lovely moment where Bond's isolated with someone who wants to kill him, and yet someone who's got a Lee Enfield rifle further down the hill manages to pick them off. And it's like you can see that sequence of shots perfectly in your head. It's really, it's excellent.
Yeah, and it's got that sort of taking Bond through a series of set pieces, taking him through a series of geographical locations, which is much more similar to the way the films would work to the way the original novels worked.
Yep.
Kingsley Amis at this point, of course, is a hugely popular writer, and to some extent I think the use of a pseudonym is to stop people from bringing with it the baggage that they would bring, knowing what Kingsley Amis, Lucky Jim, and his most famous novel at this point,
racy fiction. It's racy fiction.
Racy fiction and also comedic fiction. So it'd be stuff that you wouldn't. In fact, Ian Fleming's widow was very much against the writing of a continuation novel because she saw it as exploitation, and she said that Kingsley Amis is just going to dress Lucky Jim up in James Bond's clothes. So that was a sort of like a pushback right at the very beginning. She just wanted it to die basically where it was, but the reason behind why it was insisted upon is that there was no way of copyrighting the James Bond character. So essentially, it was use it or lose it. If you're not going to write a continuation novel and have control over it, then somebody else will. And if you do it, then you can do it and have control over it and have copyright of it.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the very beginning of the book, because I think automatically we see something which is at once typically James Bond, and yet at the same time is already beginning to move subtly in new directions.
Definitely, yeah. I think there's some really nice moments that he says essentially that this is new. There's new and change coming out of it. It's not the same as the old London. So if essentially kind of comparing it to London in the past, he's comparing Bond to the old Bond of Fleming, and then this new Bond that's emerging. There's not very little talks about the kind of the traumas that he had kind of pre Man with the Golden Gun, where he's been brainwashed and so on. So that was very interesting to have that missing. And also Tracy Bond is never mentioned at any point in the book as well, which I thought was quite interesting. But I think the start of it being a lot of golf stuff is actually a tribute to Ian Fleming, because Fleming was killed by golf. His doctor said to him, "Don't go on. That's enough. You've done enough golf. Leave it." And he's like, "Just one more round." And that was him. He kind of unfortunately met his demise through golf. So that was really really very interesting as well. And one of my notes says here about there's the notion of routine and then the opposition to routine, and I wondered if that was a critique of this novel being a new novel and the expectations of the reader in the past as well. So it's very interesting. Then, of course, we have the golf course. Then to where he and Tanner are playing golf, very familiar setting. Then we come to Quarterdeck. So Quarterdeck, I think it's in one of the Bond novels previously, isn't it? I think there's
he's definitely been mentioned in at least one novel, and it might be one of the later ones as well.
Yeah, I think it is. Yeah. And the fact that Bond's checking in on M, I mean, this is me reading subtext too much into it, but is this Amos helping out Fleming with Man with the Golden Gun? I'm not sure. I think that's probably a stretch too far. But yeah, I thought that was an interesting way to kind of get it underway, that he's going to this familiar yet other place that has M as a more rounded character rather than just this kind of desk-bound individual that we know and love. So when that's then twisted around and we find that it's actually a siege going on, and there's a siege running to tight time operation as well. This is a theme that recurs again and again through the book. Only talking about it now, I realise this is the notion of time. Time as being a device that there's a sequence of things that must happen in order at specific times, or else everything falls apart. That seems to be something that's running underneath the text as well, which I'm not sure kind of what that signifies, other than okay, let's get on with it.
I think there's I think that's a really good point, and also the fact that somebody is watching Bond, and there's this idea that the tables have been turned. He's not being sent on a mission, and he will turn up, and he's the unsuspecting target of his mission. Needs to be spied out, and there's an uneasy relationship between who knows what and when. Here, he's being spied, and he's utterly ignorant of it. He has no clue about it. And there's all this and you're right, there is this stuff about the routine that is often in Fleming. The idea of ennui is going to overtake him in between missions. So this is something he has to have. I think it's really interesting what you said about the trauma not being there, because that is something which, when Anthony Horowitz comes to write the novels that are supposedly after The Man with the Golden Gun,
Trigger Mortis and so on,
exactly. And yes, that's the one I'm thinking of specifically. He uses that. He uses the trauma, and he uses similar to Kingsley Amis. Actually, he does use a kidnapping of M, a targeting of M as part of his plot. So there is a sense that we're watching somebody watching Bond. So there's that sort of meta element of being aware of Bond as an object to be looked at, as well as somebody sort of to accompany through the plot. Also, from a sort of meta element, if you like, the idea that somebody is kidnapping M and taking him away could speak to a certain anxiety Amis might be feeling about, essentially this is what Amis is doing. He's taking away a literary creation from another author and running with it and seeing how far he can get with it.
Quite literally, yeah.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. The violence is really interesting when he gets to Quarterdeck as well, because I think there's a sort of, Ian Fleming's often talked about as being very violent and sadistic in contemporary reviews, but I think we read them and we think, wow, it's not that bad, It's sort of Casino Royale's a bit weird, and but here the violence and the torture seem to all be really amped up.
Yeah, I think you're right there. There's particularly the encounter with Colonel Sun at the end of it is, there's a philosophy of torture which is almost an erotic philosophy, and he quotes the Marquis de Sade. I mean, what's not to like? The Marquis de Sade, who of course was put into prison for his final crime of attempting to fire a pregnant woman out of a cannon. Just like, and the Marquis de Sade. So this does tie into something as well. Marquis de Sade, I've always been interested. I did read the 120 Days of Sodom when I was a teenager, and I did those.
God bless you.
Oh,
it is I've attempted it, but my word, it does get tedious.
I don't want to read any more descriptions of anatomy of bishops. No, thank you. But it was really. But what de Sade is doing, which then has an influence massively on a theatre maker called Antonin Artaud. And Artaud is, like, for me as a theatre maker, is one of the kind of most interesting characters. Is that he talks about the conscious and the subconscious. So that what de Sade is trying to do is to get your conscious mind to blast away, just go through images of grotesquerie, violence, and horrible things, so that you can get to actually what he's talking about underneath. So your subconscious mind absorbs it straight away. And I think this is something that's going on in this book as well. Artaud himself uses it through projections of like physical images of violence and struggle, and so the audience would be kind of screaming in kind of terror almost, and then their conscious mind goes, oh, and they receive the truth of what's going on underneath. To my mind, the best way to work with it is actually comedy, and writers like Willie Russell and people like that are exceptional comedic writers because they build up this crescendo of laughter where all based around the truth of these characters. Amazing that you just laugh and laugh and laugh, and then at a certain moment your conscious mind's gone because you're laughing so much, and at that moment, at that kind of apex of that laugh, there's a fall that happens and he just puts in a tiny little truth of honesty, and that it just bombs out like that. You get the ripples from it are so strong, and I think that's one of the things that Amis is trying to do here, because Bond frequently is the conscious mind of Bond is expressed, but also the subconscious mind of Bond is expressed again and again, particularly in periods of trauma and stress. So in Quarterton, he's being kind of held with his arm behind his back and all that sort of stuff, and they're going to inject him, and they do inject him, which is brilliant. That you think, oh, how's he going to get out of that? The stakes of this keep going up. His subconscious mind goes, there's something about these windows. There is something about these windows. And that he manages to kind of like, oh yeah, that, and he just, his subconscious mind almost solves the problem for him. And then later on in the book as well, when he's on the boat, trying to get some sleep before the kind of the final stages of the story, his subconscious mind is processing elements of what could go on for him as abstract images that he couldn't quite understand, that then when the moment comes to, he's like, yeah, I know exactly what that is, I know what to do. So there's this kind of conscious subconscious thing going on in the book as well, which is really interesting.
Absolutely, and that thing of like he even has like a strategy where he talks about, should I push on through trying to remember this, or should I just leave it and it will come to me?
Exactly,
because I know this works in the past, so I've got this. By the way, Quarterdeck was appeared in On Her Majesty's Secret Service.
I love that book.
Yes, both in the novel, perhaps the best novel I think of the series, and in the film. They, it's where they go for dinner to talk about the Hereditary cover story. But yes, the earlobes, exactly. Yes, absolutely. Telly Savalas and his earlobes. So yeah, that's where it's appeared. So it's got good vintage, you know. I also like the idea that M is sort of debilitated at this point, and you see his servants and things, and the servants have been killed, and that comes back again of like, you know, this sort of cruelty. There's kind of a professionalism about Bond, that he feels his profession has been insulted by these bungling amateurs who just kill everybody. It's like, you didn't need to kill them. There was 100 ways you could have got around and not. You know, there's something inelegant about their killing and just unnecessarily cruel.
And that also ties back in later on to the doctor and the siege at the end, how that doctor chooses to die in the end, and also how Colonel Sun, how he chooses to interact with Colonel Sun at the end of his life as well. Really very interesting, that the notion of professionality and personal grudge and job. And one of my favourite, it's a really dull detail, but one of my favourite things is that Markham says the British agents in home territories off duty never carry weapons. And I love that, because that's a demarcation, that's a statement of I'm not always this killer.
Yeah,
I'm not always this. You know, I'm also a person, which is really interesting.
Whereas in sort of every American movie in which someone is a policeman, they're always wearing a gun.
John McClane.
Yeah, absolutely. And the fact that David Lynch almost spoofs, I think, in Blue Velvet, where he has Laura Dern's dad wearing a gun, like while he's watching television, and while he's, you know, they're just, he's at home with his family in the evening, and he's still in shirt sleeves with a gun and a holster. And I think it's a really brilliant little sort of, you know, David Lynch is so good at using cliches to tell you something kind of subversive and interesting on screen. It's like you're so used to seeing this, you don't see it, but there should be something that just, as you say, taps on your subconscious and makes you realize this. Isn't there something odd about this whole idea of people wearing guns all the time?
Yeah.
I love the point that you're making about Artaud as well, and the theater of cruelty. That idea of you. I mean, I guess it's also essentially why I find genre literature so interesting, and why I feel it worthy of discussion and worthy of sort of investigation, and kind of why everything is. Soap operas speak to our subconscious. To go back to David Lynch, in Twin Peaks, you have Invitation to Love is always on the television in the background, and I just love the fact that David Lynch and Mark Frost are one of the few TV programs to have characters watching TV programs. So that they're, why would you have an America where nobody watches television?
And then it's mirrored in the second series, of course, by James's quite tedious adventures of the ladies in the big house.
Exactly. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, what a strange. The second series. The way that falls apart is kind of interesting as well.
It's all interesting. There's no two ways about it. But to my mind, the third series is possibly the most perfect articulation of an artist's intent I've ever seen. It's almost like there's been no compromise, and compromise is always where interesting stuff comes from. But with an artist as unique, and just unique is the word, as Lynch, you see him working in the rehearsals for it. There's a shot with a got a light sequence where he's playing with toy cars in the dust and saying, this is what we're going to do. And it's like, it's just beautiful. And a lot of people don't connect with it, but I just think it's like the nuclear bomb episode is just one of the most extraordinary things I've ever seen. It's
100%. Absolutely, totally agree. And it's like Colonel Sun. It's nothing like Colonel Sun. There's bound to be a connection that I can drop.
Mediums of control.
There you go. Yeah. So we have M has been taken off the chessboard, so to speak. He's been whisked away, and I think one of the things that Colonel Sun generally has as a novel, which is different to the James Bond novels previously to this, I think this has a lot tighter plotting. It kind of makes more sense. There's a lot of people saying we should do this and this. No, that will have been done, and that will have been done, and he'll have, the idea of what is technically possible and not possible seems to have occupied Kingsley Amis's mind more than it did Ian Fleming's. I feel this is a writer who reads his own books and edits them.
Yes.
In comparison to Ian Fleming.
Do you know, it's interesting. I'm just flicking through my own copy, which I've got here, which is the Pan copy from 1968 originally, but mine comes from the fifth printing in 1971. And I'm scanning through it. There's actually whoever had it in the 1970s has actually made a few wee annotations on it, and there's two that are quite tied to that, strangely. And what we're talking about as well is on page 93 it says, "Listen to me, Mr. Litas," says Bond desperately. "Our cause is just, and we're in deadly earnest about it. I give you my word for that as an Englishman." Isn't that? And it's really. I think that's kind of ties into it. And also, the other one they've got beside is describing. Let's see, Ariadne as coolly desirable with a question mark beside it. This, I think, was worth talking about. Kind of the impact that the characters, the story has had on the films as well. If that's not too much of a sort of tangent at this point. There's so many of the Bond movies that came after have been clearly influenced by this book. The World Is Not Enough, where M is held, taken prisoner and held in a small room without a tiny window, and there's the whole relationship there. That feels exactly like this. And then, interestingly, to try and get my head around it, I asked Gemini to give me a condensed version of all the story points, and Gemini, an AI being essentially absolute shite. It's given me the name of the character that he's in love with is Anya Amasova. Now, that's not the name of the character in the book at all. Anya Amasova is in The Spy Who Loved Me, if I remember rightly.
Right.
And that's really interesting because that character role of the friend, the enemy agent who becomes the close compatriot, is something I love, and I think that's deeply inspired by Colonel Sun in the film version of Spy Who Loved Me, because how Spy Who Loved Me is an entirely different story to that of the film, the book. So yeah.
But practically all of the Roger Moore Bonds have the idea of Cold War detente and the idea of, For Your Eyes Only does as well. Maybe neither of us will have this, interceptor machine, so we're okay. See you next time, Mr. Bond.
And it humanises the enemy. That's what I love about this, and particularly this is I think that's one of the core things with this book, is that it is humanizing the Russians at the end, and it's saying we are going into a new world. It doesn't necessarily have to be the Russians and the West, America, UK, that are the antagonists, which is stated kind of clearly at the end. But the idea of the closeness of the proximity to your enemy, and then becoming such an ally, and then the hierarchy of the enemy. He's given an award from the Soviet Union at the end. And he says, "I'm sorry, I can't accept any medals."
That's absolutely crazy. That's absolutely crazy. That it's where have we got from Casino Royale with him being sort of almost killed, or from Russia with Love being targeted by a psychopath who's state sponsored, to this point where he's worked hand in hand with the Soviets to the extent that they're willing to give him their highest honor, one of their highest military honors. I
love it. I think it's great storytelling. It's fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. And it shows Bond is changing with the world. Bond is changing with the situation. I also think we're sort of looking at Amis as a writer who, in his youth was a bit of a leftist, and he's part of the Communist Party, wasn't he? Exactly. So he's somebody who is writing almost with the notion that he knows a left-wing reader might read this, and so he wants to speak to them as well as to the sort of the major in Fawlty Towers and the other sort of people who will pick up this book and have no problem with all that stuff. So he wants to present a more complicated, nuanced picture and be more persuasive, whereas Fleming, I don't feel necessarily, I mean, in Casino Royale, Fleming really goes, well, what happened, what was communist 20 years ago is the welfare state now, so he's he's not, neither is he necessarily sort of set in his ways. It's just that Amis has just got a sort of a different colouring to that sort of nuance and complication. Let's talk a little bit about Colonel Sun as the enemy, because he's a titular enemy. He's like Dr. No in some ways. Exactly, yeah. And he's also, we've got to talk about the racial element, that this is someone
listening to it as a talking book was really quite entertaining.
Yeah, I did the same, because I read it, and then I thought, in order to sort of get up to speed, I'll listen to the audio version.
Likewise, yeah.
And you're sort of like, oh man, you can feel the actor feeling really uncomfortable when he's trying to soften it, so he's not doing a sort of arso accent.
Yeah, exactly.
Chan impersonation.
Oh, Jings. Yeah, Sun's a fascinating character. I think he's rationed enough that he's interesting. And in terms of the writing craft, it's quite difficult, though, because the first time you meet him, if I remember rightly, is it the first time you meet him, he's got M with him? Is that right? Is that the first time?
I think, or maybe he's got his sort of the workers and the people hanging around waiting for the main plot.
That's it, yeah. So it's quite difficult in terms of dramatic narrative, because he has to have something dramatic to do. And he doesn't really have any dramatic units to work on other than just, I'm the bad guy. And of course, it does have proper Doctor Evil. Let me just tell you all my plans at the end. It's of all the Bond kind of Doctor Evil reveals, I think that's the most kind of protracted I've come across. It's really, and then on Thursday at 2:22 p.m.
Not the blue wire, the yellow wire.
The one with the green stripes. It's difficult in terms of the writing craft to make him dramatic, and so his rhythm is somewhat more elongated. So those that when the encounter between Bond and Colonel Sun does finally happen, it's written as a seduction. It's written as all these seduction romances and horrors and comedies are essentially questions of distance. A horror is about 2 points, two characters being closer or further away from each other, and a romantic comedy is exactly the same idea of two characters getting closer and further away to each other. And so this is exactly the same dance that they have with Colonel Sun and Bond. And Bond's rhythm is kind of tight and frustrated, and there's a sort of sharpness to it, even though he's kind of been drugged. There's still that sort of that presence of mind. Again, mind, I think, being a kind of core element of this story, the subtext of this story, because I think Sun says it. Your body will be gone. You won't recognize M next time you see him, or M won't recognize. You won't be able to speak to each other. But the core idea of Bond being there, and Bond, when he's being tortured as well, talks about going to essentially his happy place as well, trying to find it. So there's an internal, external subtext or kind of theme going on within this that I hadn't kind of thought about until speaking about it now. But the rhythm of the two characters is interesting. So I don't know if this is, if it plays into the racial stereotyping of something being a little bit slower, or sort of manana kind of style attitude of, I don't know. It's there's a lot going on in it.
There's definitely a lot to unpick, and I agree with you. It's like Umberto Eco's essay on Bond, and him talking about there's the fairy tale structure of there's a dragon in the lair. There's Dr. No is in his lair. Colonel Sun
literally referred to in this book.
Absolutely. And Sun, by the way, to go back to your other point about it affecting the films, was used as a character name for Die Another Day, so for the villain.
Yeah, Moon. Yeah,
exactly.
It was the Moon. Yeah. It's a film I really didn't enjoy, and as a fan of the book, I was like, "Oh, cool! They're going to play riff on that." It's like, oh, this is rubbish.
Yeah, the character was called Colonel Tan Sun Moon, so he had both Sun and Moon in his name. It's definitely it's not great Brosnan, and let's face it, for me at least, even great Brosnan is not great Brosnan.
No, it's.
I mean, I like
I've got good affection
GoldenEye
for them, but
and I liked Tomorrow Never Dies. Tomorrow Never Dies. Yeah, Tomorrow Never Dies.
That's the torture scene from this is clearly inspired by Vincent. Yes. Oh, what was he? A beautiful actor that was in Amadeus and Ghost. Very tall, odd-looking fellow. He's the angry ghost in Ghost, and he's the man bringing the ice cream at the start of Amadeus.
Oh yes, I know exactly who you mean.
What is his name?
I know exactly who you mean. Let me find out for you.
Because he plays the torturer so brilliantly. In the sort of almost camp way, I'm going to hurt you a little bit.
Yes. And again, sort of loving his work. Vincent Schiavelli.
Schiavelli, that's it. Yeah, what a beautiful presence on screen. He always was. And it's, that's clearly been influenced by Colonel Sun's kind of approach as well. Just a quick tangent. When were you first aware of Colonel Sun? When did you first kind of...
As a book?
As in terms of your consciousness.
Well, I was collecting James Bond. So this was after I had my first youthful encounter with James Bond as a kid, and I'd read them all, and I'd watched all the films and everything. And then when I was collecting them when I was in Italy, then I came across Colonel Sun, and I thought, I'm not really interested in this, but I do like the cover. So I bought it for that reason, because I'll go in my collection. And it took a while. After I read it to realize that it was Kingsley Amis. I didn't know it was Kingsley Amis. I thought, who's this Markham guy? And then I looked it up, and of course, okay, it doesn't exist. It's a pen name. And I was impressed by it. I mean, I had read continuation novels previous to this. I'd read the Sebastian Faulks. I'd read, well, some of these will appear in this series. John Gardner, I'd read at this point. So it was sort of, say, at the midpoint of me reading some of the continuation novels, always with a little bit of trepidation, because I still feel, even though I like this, I still feel that it's not. I feel it's a different creature. I still feel I can see edges which are not really Bond. They don't. I mean, there's something about this that it's written by too good a writer to be James Bond.
That's a really good point.
You know?
Yeah, it is very. I think it's a writer who really understands dramatic structure. That's kind of a core thing. I mean, Fleming was wonderful. You Only Live Twice is just brilliant dramatic writing as well. But this, I think it's and I think he is, because of the longer, or just, I think it's after they arrive in Greece, there's a bit where it can just dips a little bit, like, come on, do something, and then it comes back quite quickly.
There's a lot of Kingsley Amis wanting to talk about his political opinions, essentially wanting to sort. You get the feeling he shoehorns them in, and you get the feeling that Bond cares about them more. I mean, I don't get the feeling Fleming's Bond has picked up a newspaper, you know. You feel that he's a soldier, really. He's a squaddy.
Totally.
He reads the reports that he has to read, and then he goes into action. And he might pick up a crime novel by somebody Fleming likes just to get a plug in, Raymond Chandler or someone. But that's as far as his reading will go. And here you don't really have. You don't have that. I feel you have a much more informed and intelligent Bond, frankly, and someone who's much more who's much more aware of the situation and the subtleties of things like, you know, the attraction of communism for lots of people. And
yes, that is something I thought was I really liked as well, is the critique of Ariadne from within the communist system as well. It's like, oh, you're just a tourist. You're not a real communist. You can never understand the workers' struggle. And I thought that was, having had left-leaning tendencies and being of a left-leaning mindset, that's the one thing that you kind of consciously find in left, is that the left will destroy itself by its constant kind of picking apart at itself, which is so upsetting. And I thought that was really very well observed, that was stated. Oh, you can't be a proper communist, for God's sake. No, you're just playing at it.
That was that was the purity tests, which nowadays have morphed into this identity politics, where being a victim of racism is better or worse than being a victim of sexism, which is better or worse than being a victim of homophobia. And the worst thing is not being a victim of anything. Obviously, being working class is left totally out of that question. And the fact that you can be the victim of multiple of those things is also, but it becomes a sort of Olympics of indignation at a certain point. And none of this is really that valid, because it's ad hominem boosting rather than, rather than let's look at the ideas. Let's just think about the ideas. Let's just talk about them. Let's just pretend we're hearing them all in a vacuum for a moment and see if they have any validity, rather than talking about it because I come from a place of experience. I mean, there's place for that, but I don't think it's necessarily a disqualifying, ultimate factor, or commanding factor, I should say. So we do have Greece, and we do have this sort of interesting, he drinks the ouzo, and you have sort of James Bond.
Critique of all the drinks,
Yeah, exactly.
The soapy beer.
Exactly. He's much more interested in booze than he is in food in this as well. It's much more, the food takes a real back seat to the ouzo.
I couldn't find. I don't think I heard a single reference to eggs this time.
No,
because normally that's the Bond is all about his eggs, but I'm not conscious of there being any eggs in this one.
that's a little IF signature at the corner of the painting, isn't it? That
Totally.
You see in every Bond book, but no, that's definitely missing, and there's definitely that sort of that journalist of Ian Fleming, that journalist's eye of the restaurant by the railway station is usually the best one for cheap food.
Yeah.
You get that a little bit with like, the Acropolis is a bit shit, but that
rebuilt by amateurs.
Yeah, exactly.
I thought it was wonderful.
But it's kind of but it's Kingsley Amis, the TLS reader, the contributor to the Spectator. It's the art critic, and again, that's not really Bond.
No.
Bond is the foreign affairs editor for the Times. The travel journalists, or as
Bond is Bruce Chatwin.
Yeah, there you go. With his brown bag and his leather bag and everything. Yeah. So I mean, I'm not picking it apart. I'm just saying that's why it's different to the Bond. He's your dad's Bond is different to your Bond, if you like.
Yeah, definitely.
Your Amis's Bond is different from your Fleming's Bond. Yeah. We get loads of action.
Still very recognisable. Still recognisable as Bond.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. A little less consumerist, shall we say?
I think that's a fair critique. Yep.
Yeah. But you could say this is, things are changing, and these markers are no longer as striking or as interesting as they were in Fleming's day.
Yeah, I think that's a very fair point of view.
So let's head towards the end, because we have a lot of great action scenes and a lot of got an action scene on the boat.
The double twist as well, like when Ariadne goes to see the communist the KGB kind of overlord, and it's like, oh no, she's betrayed him. Oh, how could she? Oh, after all that, I thought that was just great. It's like, I remember the first time I read it, I was like, oh, she's a rotter. How could she? And it's later on when they're back in the boat, like, how did it go? It was fine. They totally believed me. I kind of wanted a little bit more of an edge to it than that. But I thought that was really fine storytelling of, there's the twist and then there's a double twist.
They spent their reveal a little cheaply. They could have let that go on a little longer rather than let us know immediately that she's not.
And also have let us know through action in some way as well, rather than just saying it. I think would be more interesting. I think that would be a definitely thing to do.
Yeah, and so we get the action on the boat. We also get, again, sort of he sort of struggles a little bit with killing people who are not necessarily totally involved. There's a little bit of questioning of whether he should do that. And I also think there's an interesting thing going on with the sex workers who are on the island.
Oh yeah, that's great.
That stuff.
Yeah. So to go back to the killings on the boats, there's parts of this remind me of the writing of Alistair MacLean more than Ian Fleming in certain places. The kind of action of Alistair MacLean novels feels a bit more of that kind of style rather than. I don't know quite why I did that, but it kind of, when I was listening to it, it was like, oh yeah, that feels a bit more, I don't know, like Eight Bells Toll or kind of Guns of Navarone kind of feel. I guess Guns of Navarone is the Greek connection. But I think more of that there within it. But yeah, the women. So the notional tart with a heart kind of idea at the end actually is very. I thought, because there is no way out. There's absolutely no way out for Bond in the scene. So it has to be a third party that comes in and changes something, and I think it's okay. It's not the best of logics, really. That the girl at the end who kind of saves the day. It's an out. I think it's the best way out. It would have been nice to have had maybe her character built a little bit more earlier on, rather than just being one of the young ladies in the room. I think we needed a bit more of a flavour of the tensions within the character. Maybe that we could see there was some doubt within her about what she was doing, or I don't know.
Or even some agency.
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, just the simple fact that the guys turn up and it's like, okay, here is two women, pick whichever one you want, and sort of one of them goes, oh, I'd rather go with you than go with him.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's just like there is a really sort of dismissive feel to their characters for then one of them to come in and play a major role later. I think one of the things it talks to, which is something that James Bond mentions afterwards as well, is that Sun has really royally screwed things up by just making it so obvious to everyone that everyone's going to die, so that there's no sense of loyalty. And he sort of complains to Bond, oh, I had it all planned, and if it wasn't for you pesky kids, and you have to admit my superiority, even though I just happened to fail at the last minute. And Bond goes, what are you talking about? You had all the cards in your hand, and you completely screwed yourself. And so, no, you're not superior. I deserve to win.
You could almost call him Colonel Exposition. He's just
exactly. Yeah, he spends all his time doing that. He treats his minions with such contempt. They have no loyalty towards him. He delays and delays and delays in a way that is it's like The Incredibles. Don't. You're monologuing, don't stop monologuing, just get on with it. Exactly. I do love that torture scene where he comes out of his consciousness, and you don't, this is kind of the contradiction that you have with someone like Amis. They have to torture him, but in such a way as not to irreversibly damage him for the next adventure. And so
three-toed Bond encounters.
We've already had that problem with Felix Leiter getting various arms and limbs chopped off and then
growing them back mysteriously
later. But you have this where he comes out of the torture, and instead of saying what has specifically happened, he looks over and he sees that the doctor's been sick, and that tells you how bad it's been, that a medical doctor would look at it and it'd be so gruesome that he wouldn't be able to hold his lunch. I just think that's I thought that was a brilliant sort of way of conveying it without
the gap in storytelling like that. It leaves so much space for the audience, the reader. It's great. I think that's definitely.
So as we wrap up I totally agree with your sort of Alistair MacLean comparison. I think the sort of element of sort of spiking his guns as well is seen as there's one dilemma, which is, well, we could just bomb the Russians. we could just let it happen because they're not going to find our bodies. We've got our guys. And he decides, no, it's fair play. Wouldn't be cricket.
He's an Englishman.
I'm an Englishman. I gave my word. So I'm on side, and that's what they appreciate. That's what wins them over. We can trust him, Where would you? You've obviously read some of the continuation novels. I'm assuming, Alistair.
Yeah, I read a lot of the John Gardners when I was a teenager. I started by reading Icebreaker, which my Uncle Jerry had recommended to me up in Ullapool, and I got it when I was staying with them in Ullapool and went over to Inverness and bought it in the bookshop there, and I read it on the road from Ullapool to Dunoon in the car. I've never been able to read in the car, but for some reason I was able to read that, and I was just so compelled by it. It was just, and the only Bond before that I'd read was Man with the Golden Gun, funnily enough, which I do like. I think there's a lot to like in Man with the Golden Gun. No two ways about it. It's not the strongest by any means, but there's stuff in there that's great. So I was actually more a continuation reader before I read the originals, and I read several of the Gardners. Some of them were very enjoyable, but some of them it just drags it out too much, and it just doesn't. It just feels like he's doing a job for money rather than wanting to tell the kind of a passionate story, which I guess is also the problem Fleming had towards the end as well. But I've read one or two of the more modern continuation ones as well. I've not read Trigger Mortis, but I've read
it's called like Forever and a Day, I think, the Anthony Horowitz, the other one.
Yeah, right, yes, I've not read that one. I've got one sitting beside the bed. I can't remember which one it is, but
A Mind to Kill?
Maybe A Mind to Kill.
A Mind to Kill is the one where he kidnaps, where M is assassinated.
No, I've not read that one.
Ooh, spoiler.
I've got that there in the Kindle. Is it one of the weird ones I've read or something like that? could be. There was a big factory in it, I remember, and he's kind of lost in the desert at one point. It was good. I enjoyed it. I'm actually at the moment I'm reading William Boyd's Gabriel's Moon, which is his own kind of spy fiction work, and it's very good. I'm very taken with that, I must admit. It's a guy who's he's not a spy by any means. His brother's a spy. He's just kind of a writer who just stumbles into the world of espionage by mistake, and it's very domestic. It's lots about like just being in normal-ish situations, but which are twinged by an element of dread and espionage. There's always someone watching. There's always, and it's brilliant. I'm loving it. I'm trying not to read it too fast because I don't want it to be over too quickly. But there's a trilogy of them. I think the second one's out. I don't know if the third one's out yet. But Gabriel's Moon by William Boyd, excellent. I'm really, really enjoying it. So yeah,
I think his Solo was a real
Solo. It was Solo that I read. Yes.
Really enjoyable.
Yeah, I love that.
William Boyd, James Bond's continuation novel. I've read that. I've read The Forks, and I've read several of them. There's a couple of them I'm going to be sort of reading for the first time as part of this podcast, and I'm really looking forward to that. Others, I'm not. I mean, it's like The Gardener. I've read one so far, License Renewed, which is the first one. I think
he's very fond of his Saab in that book.
The Saab comes up, yeah. That's going to be a future episode that I'm going to do with Brian Baker, I think. But we'll. I'm kind of tempted to have a look at Icebreaker as well on your recommendation.
I think it's actually, for the moment we're living in now, it's very interesting because it's about neo-fascists.
Right.
And yeah, no, I think it's and also like. You know, Finland was the back door. You read any of Ben McIntyre's books about espionage, and there's always someone sneaking out through the back door in Finland. Well, British intelligence, of course, again now have a presence in Finland as well. And obviously we met in Estonia at first, and we'll see each other again in Estonia.
Yes.
Estonia is another side door as well to this period. So I think that whole Baltic role within these borderlands within.
Well, I was reading that Estonia's just started digging anti-tank trenches on their border with Russia, and so it's just like, wow, that's kind of and kind of good, you know. The unthinkable is all too thinkable now, so just
the second time
be
I was
prepared.
there. The second time I was there for the Black Nights Film Festival, I went on a bog walking tour as part of the events one morning, and it was about an hour and a half from the city, and we were in snowshoes walking across this amazing bog, and it's really beautiful, kind of an icy, kind of scritchy, crunchy, beautiful. But in the distance, you could constantly hear this go. And I said to our guide, who actually was an ex-military guy, that's the NATO troops working with the Estonian troops to prepare for Russia. And that's like 3-4 years ago.
Yikes.
So, you know, it's,
Yeah, it's not good, is it? It's not good. We need James Bond back. We need him back. He's going to have
We need
material.
a problem solver. Exactly, yeah.
He's
more
gonna
of a problem eliminator.
Problem solver. Yeah. Okay, well, listen, Alistair, thank you so much for joining me on our first episode of the second season of the James Bond Book Club, and hopefully we'll be talking very soon in the future. I'll see you in Estonia.
Yeah, magic. Thank you so much.